Stuff to do with family overwhelms me quite a bit. You know, worry or stress around family side of things, that does overwhelm me quite a bit.
In a revelation that's left even royal insiders speechless, Prince William has broken his silence about a hidden chapter of his family's past, one that Buckingham Palace never wanted the world to know. For years, whispers of a mysterious, secret sister have circulated in royal circles, dismissed as rumor. Until now, William's shocking explanation has not only confirmed the truth, but exposed a side of the monarchy darker than anyone imagined. So, what could be so bad that it was buried for decades? Stick around, because this is one royal twist you don't want to miss. A hidden truth beneath royal silence. The palace had always been vast, almost endless, but after Princess Diana's death, it became a hollow shell of its former self. The marble corridors that once echoed with laughter now carried only silence, a heavy, suffocating silence that seemed to cling to the air. Every sound felt too loud, every movement too sharp. Curtains stayed drawn, servants whispered instead of spoke, and even the morning light filtering through the windows felt colder, dimmer, as though it too was mourning her loss. Prince William, still a boy, suddenly bore the weight of a man. His younger brother, Harry, clung to him for comfort, and William tried to be strong, tried to be the pillar his mother once was. But no strength could fill the empty space she left behind. At breakfast, during quiet chapel prayers, or in his long sleepless nights, he would sit by his window, staring into the palace gardens where his mother used to walk. He could still hear her laughter echo across the lawns, still see her turning to smile at him. But among those memories was something far stranger, something that had haunted him ever since.
He may grant that you may be strengthened in your inner being with power through his Spirit.
William, she once whispered, her voice trembling, there are things they never want to be spoken about. At the time, he'd thought she meant politics or scandal, the usual secrets of royal life. But her eyes had held a sadness that made it feel different, personal, dangerous. One night, not long before her death, she had come to his room. The palace slept. Only the soft ticking of the clock broke the silence. "Promise me," she said, her voice shaking, "that you'll always search for the truth, no matter how long it takes." Confused but sincere, he nodded. "I promise, Mum." She smiled, kissed his forehead and whispered, "Good boy." Those two words would echo in his mind for years. As William grew older, fragments of forgotten moments began to resurface, pieces of a puzzle he didn't know existed. One memory stood out above all others. He had once passed her study door and heard her whispering to a close friend. Her tone was urgent, painful. "They think I'll forget," she said softly, "but I can't." I still hear her voice. I still see her face. Her friend had warned her, "Diana, you have to be careful. They'll never let you speak of it." "I know," his mother whispered, "but she's my child too." William froze, heart pounding. Her child. The question burned in his mind then, and it still did now. Could his mother have meant another daughter? Could it be possible that Princess Diana was hiding a secret child, a sister William never knew existed? And if so, how far would the royal family go to keep her a secret? The secret Diana could never tell. The years slipped by quietly, yet some memories never faded. As William grew older, small details from his childhood began to resurface. Details he had once brushed aside, but now carried new meaning. He remembered how his mother, Princess Diana, would vanish for hours without explanation. When she returned, her smile was gentle but strained, her eyes red, her face pale, as though she had been crying in silence. Sometimes he noticed sealed envelopes on her desk. No names, no addresses, just her familiar handwriting and the faint scent of her perfume. Once, while looking for a book, he found a photograph tucked between its pages. It showed a baby girl, wrapped in a pink blanket. On the back, written in Diana's graceful script, were 3 words, "My little one." When he showed her the picture later that day, her reaction startled him. She froze, her breath catching in her throat before she forced a small, trembling smile. "Where did you find this, darling?" she asked softly. "In your book," he said, puzzled. "Who is she?" For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she pulled him into her arms, holding him tighter than usual. Her voice was barely a whisper against his hair. "One day you'll understand, my darling." But not yet. He never forgot the way her voice broke on those words, or the quiet tears that fell on his shoulder. Years later, when Diana was gone, that memory became a wound that never fully healed. At her funeral, standing beside Harry, he stared at her coffin and wanted to shout the question that had haunted him all his life. "Who was she, Mom?" But only silence answered. As time went on, William learned to hide his pain behind royal composure. The world saw a calm, dutiful man, but inside, the question still burned. He began to see life through his mother's eyes. The way she had fought against silence, the way she had searched for truth even when it cost her everything. Her sorrow, he realized, wasn't just about the crown or her marriage. It was about loss, a loss the world had never been told. Sometimes, in his childhood room at Kensington Palace, he sat by the window where he once watched her walk in the garden.
She let them see the difference between the privileged and underprivileged.
He would say, why do you take them to a burger bar?
The flowers had changed, but the air still carried her laughter. Closing his eyes, he could almost hear her whisper again, "One day you'll understand." Now, he did. It had never been about scandal or duty. It was about love, the kind that was hidden, silenced, and buried deep beneath palace walls. As he stood there, tears glistening in the dim light, he whispered to the quiet room, "I know now, Mom. I finally understand." And somewhere, in that stillness, her voice seemed to linger, gentle, warm, eternal. But if the truth was finally clear to him, was the world ready to hear it? The quiet within the palace walls. The palace was wrapped in silence, the kind that feels alive, whispering through the corridors after everyone has gone to bed. Inside Kensington Palace, the soft hum of the city outside was faint, almost respectful. The laughter of children had faded, and Kate's gentle voice had quieted for the night. Only the steady ticking of the old clock dared to break the stillness. Prince William sat alone in his study, the soft glow of a lamp touching his face. A pen rested loosely between his fingers as his gaze drifted toward the window where London's lights shimmered through the mist. The world saw him as calm, composed, the image of a future king shaped by duty and tradition. But beyond that calm exterior lived a shadow, one that had followed him since childhood, something that refused to fade, no matter how many years passed. Every morning he wore his perfect smile, helped his children dress, kissed Kate goodbye, and greeted the world with warmth that reminded many of his late mother. But when the cameras disappeared, so did that smile. Kate noticed it, the moments when his eyes grew distant, lost in some invisible memory. At night, when the palace was still, she would find him sitting by the window, a cold cup of tea beside him. "Will?" she would whisper, touching his arm. "Are you all right?" He always smiled faintly. "Just thinking, darling. Go on, I'll be up soon." But he wasn't thinking, he was remembering. When the moonlight fell across his desk, he would unlock a small wooden box hidden in the corner drawer. Inside were pieces of a life that still haunted him: his mother's letters, faded photographs, and a tiny hospital bracelet. The name on it was nearly rubbed away, but he knew every curve of those letters. That bracelet, that name, they held a secret no one in the world knew. Who did the name on that fragile band once belong to? And why had his mother kept it hidden from everyone, even him? Stay with us. The letter of truth. That night felt different. The silence of Kensington Palace was heavier than usual, almost watchful. The world outside was asleep, but inside, Prince William sat awake, trapped between memory and duty. The polished room glowed faintly under the moonlight, spilling through the tall windows. On his desk sat the small wooden box that had haunted him for years. He opened it once more. Inside lay the tiny bracelet, delicate, almost weightless, made for a newborn's wrist. Under the pale light, its faint engraving shimmered, and for a moment, the years between him and his mother disappeared. He could almost hear Diana's gentle voice again. "Never forget kindness, my darling boy." The words echoed softly, pulling at something deep within him. He remembered the day he had found the box, hidden among his mother's belongings long after her passing. Back then, it had been a mystery he couldn't understand. But now, after years of growing, of seeing, of feeling the same silence she once endured, it all made sense. He leaned back, eyes burning, staring at the blank sheet before him. His hand trembled as he picked up the pen. "My dearest," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "there are things the world was never meant to know, but I can no longer carry them alone." The words came slowly, painfully. He wrote about duty and the quiet burden it placed on his heart. He wrote about Diana, her light, her laughter, and the secret that had lived in her eyes. Every stroke of ink was both confession and release. The air grew thick, heavy with memories he had spent decades trying to forget. When he paused, his gaze fell on the bracelet. "You were never meant to be forgotten," he murmured, voice trembling. By dawn, the letter was finished. He sealed it carefully, placing it beside his mother's photograph. As soft light brushed across the garden, William whispered, "I kept my promise, Mom." Kate entered quietly, eyes tender. "You didn't come to bed," she said softly. "I had something I needed to finish," he replied. But what truth did that letter hold, and who, one day, would be brave enough to open it? The secret diary in the attic. The afternoon sun slipped softly through the attic window at Anmer Hall, casting warm beams that danced through floating dust motes, like tiny ghosts of forgotten memories. The air was thick with the scent of cedar and thyme, old, gentle, and hauntingly familiar. Around her, boxes sat stacked like quiet sentinels of the past, each one holding echoes of lives once lived. Kate brushed her fingers across a worn photo album, then lifted a delicate scarf from a faded box. Its color, soft rose, seemed to catch the sunlight in a tender glow. She smiled faintly. "She must have loved this color," she whispered. But then, beneath a pile of old letters, something caught her eye. A small wooden box, tucked away and half hidden. It was simple but beautifully made, its edges smooth, its lock faintly golden. She tilted it toward the light and noticed an engraving on the lid, a single elegant letter D. Her pulse quickened. When she opened it, the hinges creaked softly, reluctant to break their long silence. Inside lay a small diary bound in pale leather, the edges trimmed in gold. The lock was broken, fragile, but the handwriting that met her eyes made her heart skip, graceful, slanted, unmistakable. Diana. For a moment, Kate could only stare, her breath caught in her throat. She handled it carefully, as though it might vanish if touched too roughly. Then she whispered, "William needs to see this." Later that evening, as twilight filled the attic, William climbed the stairs. His eyes softened at the sight of her by the window.
You know, right now and hopefully in the future, rather than just the debate concentrating on what we need to give up, what we can't do.
"You've been here all day," he said gently. "What did you find?" Kate hesitated, then handed him the diary. "Something you should see." The moment his gaze fell on it, his breath hitched. This was hers, he murmured, tracing the leather cover with trembling hands. For a long moment he couldn't open it. Finally, with a deep breath, he turned the first page. The ink had faded, but her voice came alive through every word. April 1979. The palace feels colder each day, surrounded by gold, but starved of warmth. William's chest tightened. Then he reached an entry that froze him. June 1980. They told me she didn't make it, but my heart doesn't believe them. I felt her. I heard her first cry, then nothing.
Who have had to endure suicide is a lot of unanswered questions that...
A shiver ran through him. His mother had written of a child, a daughter. Kate placed a hand on his arm, her eyes glistening. "Maybe she truly did," she said softly. She wouldn't have imagined something like that. He turned another page. The diary ended abruptly, before Diana's wedding. The silence in the attic grew thick, almost sacred. William closed the book slowly. "She always hated secrets," he whispered. Maybe this was the one she couldn't bear to tell. But one question refused to leave his mind. If Diana truly had a daughter, then where was she now? If Diana's diary revealed one truth she couldn't speak, what else still lies buried behind palace walls? The secret that could shatter the crown. The night inside Anmer Hall was still, wrapped in a heavy quietness that only deepened as the fire in the hearth faded to glowing embers. The golden light flickered across the walls, soft and tired, like a memory slowly dying. The ticking of the old clock filled the silence, each second stretching longer than the last. Prince William sat alone in the sitting room, his untouched teacup resting beside him, the steam long gone cold. Upstairs, Kate had fallen asleep after reading bedtime stories to the children. Their laughter had drifted through the halls earlier, but now the house was swallowed by calm. Still, William's mind refused to rest. His thoughts circled back, again and again, to the secret that had changed everything. It had been only a few weeks since he discovered his mother's hidden diary, tucked away in the attic, its words breathing life into a story no one was ever meant to know. Since that night, the air in Anmer Hall felt heavier, as though the very walls carried the weight of his mother's sorrow.
Humans have an extraordinary capacity to set goals and strive to achieve them.
The laughter of his children, once pure and bright, now echoed with something fragile, almost haunted. He had told no one, not even Harry. The world saw a calm prince, the perfect image of royal composure. But inside, he was a son, broken, burning for truth. In secret, he began to search. He made discreet calls from his study late at night, his voice steady, though his hands trembled. "I'm looking for someone who worked with my mother during her early years," he'd say carefully. Most people refused to speak. Others claimed to remember nothing. But one name surfaced repeatedly: Nurse Alice Hampton, a retired midwife once assigned to a royal estate in the early 1980s. A week later, William drove alone to a small seaside cottage in Devon, the salty wind whispering through the trees as if carrying voices of the past. Alice opened the door, slowly. Her hands trembled, but her eyes were kind. "I thought you might come one day," she said. Inside,
I had to then sell it for 10 years. It wasn't going to be very good. So it had to be a case of me looking at it going, now hang on.
sunlight spilled across the kitchen table as they sat together. "I need to ask you about my mother," William said quietly. Alice nodded, tears brimming. "Your mother was kind," she whispered. "Too kind for what they did to her. You're not the first child she carried." The room fell silent. William's breath caught. She spoke of secrecy, of power, of a baby girl born too soon, alive, taken away, erased. When William left, the waves crashed hard against the cliffs, echoing his mother's cries through time. That night, back in his study, he held her diary close. "I'll find her, Mom," he whispered. "I promise." But now that the truth was stirring, a truth powerful enough to shake the monarchy itself, how long could Prince William keep his mother's secret before the palace decided to bury it all over again? The woman in the rain. The sky above Norfolk was a wash of silver and gray, the kind of sky that carried both calm and sadness in its silence. The rain fell softly, steady and endless, whispering against the windows of Anmer Hall. Inside, Prince William sat alone, the glow of the gray morning casting faint shadows around him. He watched as raindrops slid down the glass in slow, twisting lines, a quiet rhythm that mirrored the storm inside his heart. Months had passed since he uncovered his mother's secret, the one buried beneath decades of royal silence. The truth had shaken the very core of everything he believed about his family. He had tried to move on, tried to bury the ache beneath his royal duties. But pain like that never truly left. It simply hid, waiting. And that morning, it returned. A letter had arrived. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, and stamped with the seal of a private law firm in London. The handwriting was neat but hesitant, as though the writer feared every word.
We go through all the basics of recycling and making sure we minimize water use and turning off lights when you leave the house and stuff like that, and making sure...
William's pulse quickened as he broke the seal and unfolded the paper inside. The message was brief, just a few carefully chosen sentences, but one line made his hands tremble. "We have reason to believe a woman in our care may have a connection to the late Princess Diana, based on a confidential royal medical file dated before your birth." William stared at the words, reading them again and again. His chest tightened until breathing felt impossible. He placed the letter gently beside his mother's old diary, the one that had started everything, and whispered, "It can't be." But deep down, he already knew it could. For days he said nothing, Not to Kate, not to Harry, not to anyone. Finally, he made his decision. No palace involvement, no advisors, no headlines. He needed to face this alone. A week later, under a grey morning sky, William left London behind. Dressed simply in a dark jacket and cap, he drove through winding country roads until he reached a small cafe hidden between quiet fields. The windows were misted from the warmth inside, the sign old and faded. When he stepped through the door, his heart pounded so hard it hurt.
Aged 25 when she became queen, and me being 29. And
she was already there, sitting by the corner window. The woman stood as he approached. Her hair was a soft shade of brown, her movements gentle, uncertain. But when he looked into her eyes, time seemed to stop. They were blue, the same deep, kind blue he had seen 1,000 times in old photographs of his mother. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them was thick with something unspoken. Then William whispered, "You look familiar." Her voice trembled. "I've seen you on television all my life," she said softly. "But I never thought this day would really come." And as silence settled between them once more, one haunting thought echoed in William's mind. Had he just come face to face with the sister his mother was never allowed to keep watching? The truth beneath the crown. Years later, when the woman began searching for her birth records, she expected a simple answer, a date, a name, a place. But what she found was something else entirely. Fragments that didn't fit, documents that looked altered, and one mysterious note in faded ink. Birth under protection, file sealed, royal medical record. Her voice trembled as she told the story, her hands twisting together nervously. William sat motionless across the table, every word striking him like a slow, deliberate heartbeat. The cafe around them faded into silence. Only her voice remained, soft but steady, carrying the weight of decades buried in secrecy. Tears welled in William's eyes before he could stop them. His throat tightened. I don't know what to say," he whispered, his voice cracking under the weight of disbelief and emotion. The woman smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. "You don't have to say anything," she said. "I just wanted to know."
Really, we were happy to show him off to whoever wanted to see him. As any new parent knows, you're only too happy to show off your...
If I was real, if she was real. William's hand trembled as he reached across the table, gently taking hers. Her fingers were warm, fragile, human, and heartbreakingly familiar. "She was real," he said quietly, his voice breaking. "And she loved you." She never stopped. They sat for hours after that, the afternoon fading into soft gold. They spoke of life, of what could have been, of paths that never crossed. She told him about her tiny cottage by the sea, about her work at a children's hospice, and the peace she found in helping others heal. She had lived simply, quietly, far from the chaos and expectations of royalty. William listened in silence, torn between peace and pain. Every tilt of her head, every soft smile, reminded him of Diana, her warmth, her kindness, the way her presence could fill a room. It was like seeing a part of his mother come back to life. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the cafe grew quiet. Chairs were stacked, lights dimmed. William knew the truth could never be made public. The monarchy was fragile. A single revelation like this could change everything. But he also knew he couldn't let her disappear again.
The metaphorical rug can be pulled from under your feet quite quick at any point. It takes you into some pretty...
He looked into her tearful eyes and said softly, "You'll never be alone again. I promise." She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't want anything. I just needed to know I wasn't forgotten." William stood, pulling her into his arms. He held her tightly, as though shielding her from the cold winds of history itself. "You're not forgotten," he murmured. "You're one of us, even if the world can't know." When he stepped outside, the air was cool and still. The stars shimmered faintly above the Norfolk sky. Somewhere, he felt his mother watching, proud, peaceful, free. And as he drove back into the night, one question echoed endlessly in his heart. How long could the truth remain hidden beneath the weight of the crown? The letter of truth. The soft glow of a London evening spilled through the tall windows of Prince William's study, turning everything it touched into shades of amber and quiet sadness. The house was still. From upstairs came only the faint echo of laughter long faded, the sound of his children now asleep. Kate had gone to bed hours earlier, her gentle goodnight kiss still warm on his cheek. But William remained where he was, seated at his desk, staring at the empty page before him. The pen in his hand trembled ever so slightly. For years, he had carried the truth like a locked stone inside his chest, heavy, immovable, unspoken. But tonight felt different. The silence of the room seemed to invite him to finally let it go. He took a deep breath and began to write. The first words, slow, deliberate, drawn from the deepest corners of his heart. This was not a letter for the world, not for the palace, the press, or history's endless gaze.
We've got to hang on to optimism and hope, because it is the biggest driver of change. It is the biggest driver of innovation.
It was for his children, a truth that would one day belong to them. A truth about love, loss, and the kind of courage that can never be written in headlines. He wrote about their grandmother, Diana, about her laughter that could fill a room, her warmth that made strangers feel seen, and her quiet pain that few had ever understood. He wrote of the hidden story she'd carried, the sister lost to time, the life that had been erased but not forgotten. And he told them that beyond the crown, beyond the endless expectations, life was about something far greater: forgiveness, compassion, and humanity. His pen slowed. He closed his eyes for a moment, whispering softly into the still air, "You'll read this one day, and I hope you'll understand." His mind drifted to her, the woman he now knew as his sister, the one he had met only once, yet whose presence had mended a part of him that had been broken for decades. She lived quietly by the sea, content in her peace, far from the noise of royalty. She never asked for more, and every year on Diana's birthday, William kept his promise to her. 2 bouquets were sent.
The scale of the problems and things like that. So we wanted to break it down and try and work out how could we add something that was going to...
One to his mother's island resting place, and one to a small, nameless cottage by the coast. A silent message. "We remember. We are still family." As the night deepened, William signed his name carefully, folded the letter, and placed it inside a carved wooden box beside a faded photograph of Diana smiling in the sunlight. For a long time, he stared at her face, her kindness, her strength, her truth. "One day," he whispered, barely audible, "the truth will set us all free." Then he closed the box, setting it gently on the shelf. The burden felt lighter. The silence finally felt kind. So what do you think? Should William reveal the truth to the world, or keep his promise of silence? Let us know in the comments below, and subscribe for more royal secrets.